Okay, so this video is going to be an introduction to some different ways of visualizing sounds, because I both like to use these for mixing and I also like to use these in my videos, so this might help you follow along and read these different meters here. So I'm going to be using the same audio loop on all these different meters, so you can sort of make a connection between what you see and what you hear, and maybe get a feeling for how these work. So first of all, it's just the waveform or oscilloscope, depending on how you do it. This is what you see when you play an audio file. I'm going to play you the loop now that I'm going to be using. You're probably most familiar with this. So you can see here the kick. Depending on the waveform or oscilloscope, these are going to be colored, so red is bass, blue is highs. You can see here's a kick, this is the sub that's playing continually, this is the snare, here's another snare, here's another kick. The sub stops here, and these are the hi-hats. The high frequencies are going to be much lower in amplitude than the low frequencies. So what I like to use this for is mainly just monitoring gain. I don't really like VU meters or anything like this. I find this much more useful because I can see exactly when my audio is peaking, what my envelopes are, maybe where I need to sidechain. For example, here I can see this sub and this kick are kind of adding up, so I would probably sidechain this. I see that this doesn't really need sidechain, the sub stops early. Here's the snare, here's another kick. You can also see here these are just interacting in weird ways, so I would probably want to sidechain this. And anything else I can see from this, I can see the hi-hat here. I can see maybe I would want to clip this kick here because it's peaking quite loudly. It kind of depends. This is basically just a volume control, and you can also see it, use it to see some phase and such. So the next meter is going to be the spectrogram. Now this isn't going to be synced to the loop, but this is playing the loop also. So I'm going to play the loop again, and then I'm going to explain what you can see. So on the x-axis here we've got frequency, on the y-axis we've got the volume. First things you can see, so this is the sub fundamental here. It's consistent, and then the kick is coming down and hitting here. This is the snare fundamental, so you can see the pitch of your snare. You can actually use this to tune stuff. Here you can see harmonics of the kick. You can see the hi-hats moving up here, and this is mostly useful depending on what speed you set it to get a sense for the spectral balance of your sound, as well as different pitches in your sound. If you kind of tilt these, a lot of these have a tilt control, you can set it to be flat for what you consider a pleasant spectral balance, so maybe like a pink noise curve or 4.5 dB per octave curve are popular ways to tilt these. And then you can sort of see, my highs are very low, and you can think about whether you enjoy that or maybe you want to change something about that. This is in general how I use these meters. I see something weird about the meter, and then I think about if that's intentional or not. I would never just go by the meter, but sometimes you don't hear stuff immediately, and the meter gives you new ideas to how to change your sounds, and you can test if that makes it sound better. If it doesn't, the meter looking weird is fine. Ignore it. This is the spectrogram. It's maybe a bit less common, although you've probably seen the AU5 video on it now. You can see here, this is the kick. Waiting for it to loop again. These are the hi-hats. This is the snare fundamental. These are the sub. You can see all the harmonics, which is quite nice. You can see the pitch envelope of the kick a bit. I use kicks with quite quick pitch envelopes. You can see the timing of all the sounds. You can see how loud the snare fundamental is. Sometimes you can see harmonics that ring out here over time. So yeah, this can potentially be quite useful for controlling pitch envelopes and designing sounds. In a way, this is the most complete view of the spectrum, but it's also kind of the most useless, I find. Like, you can use this to track pitches and stuff and get a sense for your mix, but I find a lot of the other meters, while less complete, a bit more practical in actually helping guide decisions. This is just kind of cool to look at to get an overall idea of your mix. And it comes with the software I use, so I've always got this open. Then this is a stereo meter. Goniometer, sometimes it's called, sometimes it's tilted differently, basically mids, sides. Red again is sub. Blue again is high, so you can see these hi-hats here, you can see the snares hitting. The snares and the kicks have got some stereo information as well as the hats, while the subs are completely in mono. So this is mostly useful for checking how wide something is, if your subs are in mono, if there's something unexpected going on in your stereo imaging. And these are them all together kind of synced up, so you can see here the sub hitting, the sub hitting, the sub hitting, the sub hitting. I'm gonna play the loop again. This is the snare fundamental here. You can see the snare fundamental. This is the snare. And this is kind of what I have open if I have my full metering set up. This at the top of my screen and then these at the bottom. So yeah, the software I use for this is Oscilloscope Pro, which is a very useful oscilloscope. You can zoom in as much as you want. You can overlay different sounds on here. You can layer them. You can sync it to BPM. It's very flexible. Yeah, you can put this on different channels and then compare your kick and your sub, and then there's some or something like that. It's very nice, especially it being BPM synced, which is the main reason why I use this over mini-meters, which is my solution for most metering. As you can see, you have a lot of options here for metering. The ones I use are the spectrogram, this spectrum, the peak LUFS meter, and this stereo meter. There are a couple other options like oscilloscope and waveform, which a lot of people use. I don't find them as useful, so I'd rather have my spectrogram nice and big. Yeah, these are the settings. You can hide these. This is a standalone app. You can just watch these meters as you listen to music, and that's something I find very useful for practicing, kind of reading these, because you'll learn to make a connection between what you hear and what you see. And this can help you use these meters in a sensible way. And it can also show you that a lot of the music you enjoy maybe doesn't look what you'd expect it to look like on these meters. So you've got to be kind of careful with using these as your main guidance for making decisions. There are a lot of other tools on this, like any EQ has a spectrum analyzer, of course. Span is a very popular free spectrum analyzer. TDR Prism is, I guess, the new cool free spectrum analyzer. Vision 4X has all these and is nice and BPM synced, but it's less narrow than mini-meters, so I don't really like it much. It's more made for full screen usage. Also, the spectrogram isn't as sharp, which isn't as useful for pitch tracking, but has some advantages in time resolution. Then yeah, Isotope Insight is, I guess, the most expensive one of these, but also kind of the worst. I don't really like this. The spectrogram is awkward. It's not really made for actually having this open all the time, although it has a nice LUFS meter and like a stereo meter, but yeah, there are a lot of options for this. I'm sure there are plenty of others you can write down if you've got any favorites. I know that Wave Candy by ImageLine is very popular, but you can only get that with FL Studio. So yeah, I don't use FL Studio, so I don't have it listed here. So that's already it on meters. I hope this helped you get some kind of intro to them, maybe make some more sense of what I'm talking about when I'm showing these in my tutorials, or maybe find some stuff you might want to use for yourself to get some different impressions of your sounds and maybe give you some new ideas. things to do to them. So yeah, that's it. See you.